For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tom Duff. I'm not an MVP because I get that all the time. Oh, you're an MVP. No, no, I'm really not. um, I work for an insurance company in the Pacific Northwest. I'm actually based out of Minnesota. And yeah, I just have gotten into this thing of I share tips and it makes people happy. Um, so here's my Twitter account. I need to change that to X actually. Here's my X account. I do a website. You'll see most all these tips, probably all of them. If you follow the website 1minuteofficemagic.com, I post them internally first for the company that I work for, and then I also then turn around and post external to 1minuteofficemagic.com. There's my LinkedIn. If you want to hit me with email, there we go. But we're going to go through 20 tips. It'll be very fast paced. And the thing is, don't expect that every tip that I share, you're going to go, oh my God, I got everything out of it. Or you're going, I got like 3 or 4 of them. But other than that, ugh. If I can get 3 or 4 tips that resonate with you, then I believe I've done my job, because it can be that one tip, those 2 tips that actually make a difference in how you do your work, and they change your life, or your work life at least, for that particular thing that you're trying to do. So hang in there. If you don't like the first one, you may like the next one. And they're all over the place. So it's not like just Copilot. In fact, you won't see any Copilot ones in here, or just Outlook. They will be across the board for Microsoft 365. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the first one, this is a relatively new thing that had come out, which I really like, and that is turning Microsoft Teams notification or post notifications off. So I'm sure you've been in a meeting and you're like, yeah, I'm dropping out of this meeting, don't care. But the chat in the meeting just goes off the hook. And you keep getting ping, ping, ping. It's like, I left the meeting. I don't want to see this any longer. Well, now what you've got the ability to do is you can basically say, or it doesn't even have to be a meeting. It can just be a regular group chat or something. You don't want to be notified. You can always go into that chat. If you right click, you'll see the ellipsis up at the top, and you can turn off the notifications. This means that you won't get pinged anymore, and everybody can just continue on their merry way. I find it one of the best things to keep from having to, see stuff that I don't want to see, and I can just move on from there, and they can continue to exist without me. Now, if you find that you do want to continue to get notifications, but you turned it off, well, what you can do is you can always hit that ellipsis again, and it's like a toggle switch. You can now turn those notifications back on. So you have the ability to turn it off, turn it back on again, but ideally what it's going to allow you to do is see a lot less of that clutter for things that really don't matter to you anymore. So this is a really quick and easy one that you can use, so always try that one. This is one that I don't use a lot, but it's kind of cool the first time you put it out there and people are going, what's that? So let's say you're in a group chat and somebody says, hey, I think we need to talk about, or talk to Bob about this. And you're like, okay, so do we bring Bob into the chat? Well, you may not want to bring Bob into the chat because everybody may not agree that Bob is the best person for this. But what you can do is you can share their contact information very simply. So what you can do is when you go in to actually do your chat message, go ahead and put your @ symbol, which is usually what you do to tag people or flag individuals. And when you do that, you can say share someone's contact information. And when you do that, in this case, I took Sandra Pfeiffer, put her name in there. Keep in mind, they're not going to be @mentioned and they're not going to be notified. So basically, you're just able to share the information about this person in your chat so people can then click on it and get more information. So once you go ahead and put their name in there, you click OK, you'll see Sandra's name here, and there's a little contact card icon that shows up. When you click send, what that then does is shows up in the chat with her name and the icon. And when you click on that, it pops up her particular contact card or profile card. And this is a really good way to bring people's attention to somebody that you might want to engage in some particular effort that you're doing. And it's great because they don't know that you're doing it, and you don't have to bring them into a chat that then they think, ah, no, I'm not part of this, and then you have to remove them. It's just a quick way to share their basic information. This is one that it's a little bit more complicated than some of the other tips that I share, but this is creating wiki style links in OneNote. So I know a lot of people like wikis. I haven't ever been a big fan of them, but I know a lot of areas like to use them for quick site documentation, where you basically put something out there and you can link to other pages. And wiki, I think it's Hawaiian for quick, and it was designed to be the quickest possible website that you could build to be able to link the documents internally with each other very quickly. So what you can do now is you can go through and say, hey, I'd like to have a wiki. And we used to have a wiki concept in SharePoint 2010, but in SharePoint Online, you really don't have that wiki concept anymore. So what you can do is you can use OneNote, and this is probably really good if you have some documentation that you want to keep out there. This is the way you might want to do it. So in order to do this wiki style thing, I went ahead into one of my OneNote notebooks, created a section, key table of contents, and then I went ahead and put 5 different topics there: intro, preliminary action, core research, project testing, and product completion steps. So those are the pages initially that I'm going to want to create that I can link to have additional information. So when I do that, what I can do is I can highlight those 5 things and say link to pages. And once I do that, what it does automatically is it goes and creates those 5 pages. And you'll see that these are now links. So in my table of contents, I could click on introduction and I would be taken to the introduction page in this particular section because that's how wikis work. Now, let's say that you go, oh, well, I've got another page that I want to have here called final steps. Do I have to go create final steps, and how do I get it linked here? Well, what happens is when you're creating links in a wiki, what you do is you end up putting square brackets, 2 square brackets around the left side, 2 square brackets around the right side. Don't put spaces in between the brackets. It's just in order to do this, I actually had to put spaces because otherwise it would have turned around and turned it into another wiki page, and I just wanted it for demonstration purposes. But if you go through and you put like square bracket, final steps, square bracket, and you put that second square bracket in there, you're going to have a link to a page that's called Final Steps, and it's going to show up over here in your wiki table of contents. Now, keep in mind, this linking that you see here doesn't actually work across notebooks. So if you had some sort of a documentation setup that you wanted with, multiple pages and all these kind of things, you'd either want to probably create a new notebook that was just going to be for this, or make sure that, hey, that we're going to put this information in this existing notebook, but that's all we're going to be able to do is link to within that notebook. So keep that in mind as you're actually doing this. And the other thing to keep in mind too is if you create a page in this fashion and then I deleted the page, it's going to end up in your OneNote recycle bin, which is where pages go when you delete them. The thing that you might want to keep in mind, though, is if you go back and go, oh, now that I've deleted the introduction page, I think I need to add a new introduction page. And you go to do square brackets, introduction, close square brackets, it's actually going to go get that page out of your recycle bin, which is possibly not what you were looking for. So in a case like that, so it doesn't delete to the link to the deleted page, you probably want to go into your history, the notebook recycle bin, and actually physically delete it from there so that page does not exist in the notebook anywhere else. And then you can go ahead and add it back in and start from scratch. So This is a little more complex than a lot of the ones that I share, but it's one thing that if you want to have a notebook for like documentation or things like that, and you want it to be easy and flexible and basically simple for people to add stuff to, this is a good way to go about it. So keep that in mind. This is something that people had been asking for forever, and they finally got around to letting you do that. And that is when you create a team, Microsoft Teams team, as you know, you're usually in a situation where the first channel that it creates, and its only channel, is the word general. And you'd like, well, I'd like to change that because general really doesn't mean anything to me in this particular, context for this team. I'd like to call it something different like lobby. Yeah, you couldn't do that. It was locked down. You're going to be stuck with a general channel called general. Well, now Microsoft finally has let you change the name of the general channel to something that better suits your needs. So to do that, and this would work for changing the name for any channel, it's just now you can also do it for general, is you go ahead, hover over the name of the channel. You'll see an ellipsis that shows up. You click on that, and then you have the option to rename the channel. So in this particular case, you get this pop-up that says edit general channel. Keep in mind that if you change the general channel to be something else, you unfortunately don't get to go back and rename it to general again. So make sure that if you decide to change general, that everybody's on board with that. You could probably change it to something else again. You just can't go back and reclaim the general name. In this particular example, I wanted it to be lobby because I thought that was a much better channel to have that everybody's going to see when they first come in. You click it, save, and now you see in the channels for this team, you've got lobby or whatever name you chose. So this makes it a lot easier for you to have a team space that actually sounds like it's coherent for what you want people to be able to do instead of just this general channel, general channel, and people not knowing what that means. You can make it now mean something that actually works. And you'll see here in the back end SharePoint site where you've got the folder for each of your channels, it also updates the name of that folder. So this would have been general before, now it's lobby. So it keeps everything in sync. So that's a good thing. So Sharon, do we have any questions out there that I need to cover?
I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody has any questions, once again, just feel free to raise your hand or post them in chat and I'll keep an eye on it.
Sounds good. So removing the header section from a SharePoint page. This is something that you used to be able to do a lot more easy back in the SharePoint on-prem days. And there were ways to do it in a SharePoint Online page, but it was really kind of quirky and funky. And it's something that you completely forgot every time you wanted to turn around and do it the next time. So this is a really good tip for if you want to have a SharePoint Online modern page, but you really don't want to have that banner on there. You don't want to have that header. You just want a page that you can start throwing web parts on, and it's basically a quote unquote blank page, or as blank as you're going to get it within SharePoint Online. So now here's my starting page. I've got my title section, and this is what I want to get rid of. So to do that, I click within this title, and now I have the option to be able to delete the web part or to delete the header web part, which you didn't used to be able to do. So you go ahead and click that delete icon, poof, the header's gone. This is awesome. However, you still have the section where they're only going to let you do an image, a hero web part, a banner, or a countdown timer. Now, I want this whole thing gone because I want to put my own sections in there that I can put anything in. So when you click into this section, you now have the capability to delete that section. And when you do that, basically it's gone. You now have just the stuff at the top. You've got the whole so you might be interested in, which you can turn off anyway. But in effect, you now have a blank page, which is what you may want in order to be able to design something that looks a little bit different than what a normal SharePoint page would look like. Now, the thing that is kind of tough when you do publishing is that header is where it gets the name of the page. And you just deleted the header. So it doesn't know what to do in terms of what to call the page when it's saving it in the site pages library. So if you've done that, when you go to save it or publish it, it's going to throw up this particular screen that says, hey, you need to pick a page title because otherwise, we're not going to know what to save this under, and that's going to be part of the URL. So if you just close this message, it pops this panel up. You give it whatever you want the name to be. And when you do that, I just called it headerless page because I'm not terribly creative. It puts the page name up here in the corner. You can hit publish again. And now when you look at the URL, you'll see the page name you selected is /headerless-page.aspx. So again, if you've got people who are like, well, I don't want it to look like a SharePoint page. I want it to look different. This is probably the best way to give them the ability to go out and start making wholesale changes to the page, still within the whole web part structure, but they're not going to see the big banner across the top and things like that they would otherwise. This is one that was so much fun. We started doing laptop upgrades, and of course, people are going from Windows 10 to Windows 11. And we had a couple people who were like, so I'm having problems with OneNote. Just like OneNote opens up and I try to open something else up and it never opens on top of OneNote. It's just behind OneNote and I have to close OneNote or minimize it. And how do I do that? And I'm like, I don't know what your problem is. So I started looking at it. And when I went into this, I happened to scan over under view and saw this option here, always on top, which I had never seen before. And what that means is if you have this clicked and turned on, OneNote is going to take up the screen. If you're on full screen, if you have it minimized or, resized or something, that's all well and good, but it's going to stay on top of whatever else launches. So this could be nice if you're going, hey, I've got a little sliver of OneNote that I use to take, random notes during the day, and I want it to stay on the top of everything. I don't want to have to keep finding it and bringing it back up and then minimizing it. This can be a really good way to make that happen. Or you could be terribly irritated about the fact that it won't close down. You hate this and you want to turn it off. So as I mentioned, this is one of those tips where you think that's a great feature. Oh, I'm so glad I can turn this thing off because I hate this feature. So take whatever you want out of that, but it's a way that you can make sure that OneNote either stays on top of everything that you have or you don't have it staying on top of everything you have. Because usually it'll probably show up when you least expect it. Another change that's relatively recent, and that is change to file share versioning in SharePoint. So it used to be that when you had versioning, you basically had your automatic version, or basically you had the version count limit. That was about it. And the version count limit was, hey, we're going to keep 500 versions. And you had the thing to say, do you want major, minor, all those particular things, which was fine. But you may have a situation where you had a really big file being changed numerous times a day, and that's going to take up a lot of space. So they came up with some different options with version time limits. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility in what you're actually doing. Now, by default, you've got the versions won't be deleted based on their age. So this is like how it works now. You're just going through, it's going to keep the number of versions, and it will keep those number of versions until you get more than that. It starts rolling off the older ones. So this is the normal behavior. But what you now also have the ability to do is you can select automatic. So automatic goes in and actually says, hey, we're going to go ahead and determine how long it was, what's the activity, and we'll make some decisions for you. That kind of totally scares me a little bit because I don't know why it's making that and they're not terribly clear about what it is. Or you can say manual. If it is older than 20 days, 30 days, 365 days, it starts rolling it off regardless of what the number of major versions are listed. So if you have some file that says, hey, this has a 1-year retention period, instead of going, well, is that 100 versions? Is that 50? How many is that? You just basically go through and say, oh, hey, go ahead and delete when it reaches the manual or the following number of days. So this can be really helpful when you're dealing with your various compliance issues, retention issues. Use this feature and you can end up saving a lot of space in the process, plus actually have a more realistic number of versions that you're keeping out there instead of just everything until it hits some arbitrary predefined number. Changing the placement in your Microsoft Teams notification. Now, as I tell you about this, I will give you the caveat that when I wrote this tip a couple months ago, I had it in my Teams client, and it was available to me. And this was in the Teams client, not the Teams browser. But other people are like, well, I can't see it. I don't have this option. Well, it's because it's just now rolling out to the Microsoft Teams web browser version. So if you're using the web browser version of Teams, you may not see this yet, but if you're using the Teams client, you should. And so what you do is you go into settings, notifications, activities, just like you would for any other settings you might be doing out in Teams. And you're now going to have this thing of position on the screen. So normally by default, whenever you get some message come up, it pops up in the lower right corner of your screen, which is fine. But maybe there's something that sits in the lower right corner of your screen that it overlays. And you're like, God, close, close, close. I need to see this. What you can do now is you could move it to the other 3 corners if you want to. So top right, bottom left, top left, whatever makes more sense to you. So I think in this particular example here, I went ahead and changed my placement to where it was bottom left. So now when I get pop-ups, I just see the pop-up over on the left-hand side of my screen, which I don't know that it's out of the way, but for example purposes, I'm like, well, I got to move it somewhere so I can see what's going on here. So this is what came up in that particular case. Again, it may not matter to you. Having it over in the lower right, could be a non-issue. But again, you may have something that sits on your computer that sits in the lower right corner. Maybe you want to move it up to the upper right corner or something. So you now have those capabilities to do that, which you didn't have before. This is something that again used to be a little bit more difficult, but now it's coming out in the new Outlook, or actually it's in the current Outlook client, which is good. I'm assuming they will put it in the new Outlook client also. But it's not in the browser. I think it's just in the Outlook client itself. So I kind of catered to the people who still, using the old-fashioned version of Outlook or Outlook Classic. But what you can do now is you can easily create templates that allow you to quickly create an email that's kind of like predefined for things that you may, send emails on a regular basis. So in order to get to that template feature, go into like a new message that you're doing. Message, you'll have your ellipsis over here. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see My Templates. And when you see My Templates, what it does is it brings up this My Template screen. And by default, it gives you the I'll reply later. So when you click on that one, it's basically going to, just put that message into the body of your, you have to type it. And you can put more information in there too, obviously. Or I'm running late, or lunch. Do you have any plans? Let's do something. Or you can create your own template, which is probably where you might want to go with this. So if you go ahead and do, hey, I want to create a new template, it's going to be called My Go-To Template, do all the things, and I save it. Then what happens is when I go to create a new email, I can go over to My Templates, select the My Go-To Template, do all the things within the subject line, and I'm off and ready to go. Now, this is really simplistic. Probably what you might want to do if it was a little bit more normal for business stuff is you may have information listed like, customer ID, next line, member ID, next line, and have these labels of information that you want to be able to fill in. And if you have this template, rather than having to type out the whole line each time, you can just basically go out and say, next to customer ID, put in the ID, member ID, put in the member ID. And it may help you with that with your formatting. Or maybe what you do is you just have a whole, hey, on this date, we did bracket, insert stuff here. And then we went and did insert more stuff here. And then when you actually send this, you can highlight that bracketed information and type in the information that you want to have show up. So it's a good way to get some consistency in an email without you having to type all the stuff that is exactly the same every time you send an email like that. So it's out there, you can do it. This one's a little bit more complex too. I basically put this one out there because I forget every time when I need to do this that it's actually done and what are the steps to get it there. And that's to add ratings to a SharePoint list or library. So this is really great if you've got something where you have a list. In this particular case, we had travel destinations. So you've got the attraction and where it's located. People come out here, I want them to go, oh, I want to offer some ratings. How do I feel about the Great Pyramids? How do I feel about the Eiffel Tower? It should have been Disney World, not Word, but whatever. Uh, so you can get your list out there. In order to actually then turn on the ratings for SharePoint list or library, you go into your list settings, go into rating settings. Oops. And then under rating settings here, you can either do likes, which just are little heart clicks, or you can do star ratings, which is a 1 to 5. If you turn ratings on, you're actually going to get both of those options. It just, you can decide what you want to have in the view. You can put them both in there if you want to, but it's just determining how you want to track things. You may go with hearts. Oh, I just want people to say, I love this idea. Or the star ratings to say, I give this place a 1, I give this place a 5. So there's slightly different variations of why you might want to use those, but you've got both of those options. So if we go in here, you'll see that when I turn that on and I go back to look at the columns, I now have a rating column, I have a number of ratings, and I have a number of likes. And so what I can do at that point is go into my view, my all items view, and select, I want to show the liked by, I want to show the number of ratings, I want to show what the rating number was. And then when you look at the view that comes out of that, this is great. It tells me how many people like something, and it keeps saying, hey, there were, X number of people who rated this, and here's what the overall rating is. And I think on the next screen here, I actually have an example. So one person really liked Disney World, it got a 5-star review. In this one down here, Great Pyramids, actually 2 people liked it. You could actually then say that both of them gave it a 5-star because that's the average there. One person didn't think the Eiffel Tower was great. They probably didn't like the French people not being polite to them when they were having dinner or something. But this is a really cool way to be able to have some feedback on a list of items without having to go and ask people, hey, let me know what you think. Let me know what you liked. This just collects that information for you automatically, and it's really easy to display. And I would say that if you do add this, you probably want to go through and change the view to sort by column and sort like in descending order. So your highly rated stuff is up at the top. And that then makes sure that, hey, look, all my top rated stuff is up at the beginning. So you're going to see the ones that are most popular up at the top. Do keep in mind, this can only be done in SharePoint team sites. SharePoint communication sites do not support the rating feature. So if you're going out there and going, I don't see these things, how do I do them? There's a good chance you may be in a communication site instead. Pull quotes. This was kind of a interesting thing. A lot of times when you're reading, especially like magazines or stuff, they have, special graphic layouts in their text and stuff, and they have what are called pull quotes. And the pull quotes are like when they take a particular phrase or something and they offset it in a way, usually it's bigger text, and it brings your eyes to that particular piece of text there. So in this particular case, you now have the ability with this pull quotes icon in your text box to do pull quotes. So in this one, I just used one of the Lipsum Aurum, whatever word generator, and I did it with cat stuff. So I've got this random cat thing out here, and I wanted to go ahead and do a pull quote on, I could shed on this if I had the energy. So on my first selection, I went ahead and do the pull quote of intense. So it goes ahead and puts a line at the top and the bottom, italicize, it's bold. Box is basically the same thing, only it's got the closed in sides to it. Then you've got the side border, which has this, side border right here, but everything is just kind of out in the open, still italicized, still bolded. And then you've got the quote icon, which I kind of like, which is basically the left side of a quote. And that then, as you're reading this, you're thinking, oh, I could shed on this if I had energy. That's the point that they want me to take from this. I will caution you, though. You think, oh, this is great. I'm going to put pull quotes everywhere. Yeah, using less of this is probably better because if you have a lot of pull quotes on your entire page, people are going to get really confused and not know what the most important thing is. So this really should be reserved for that one or two points of interest that you want them to be able to see on this page and actually get something from it. So Microsoft Outlook. Copy meeting attendee responses to the clipboard. This is a relatively new feature where it used to be that you could see the attendees, but it was really kind of hard to go out and actually get that list of attendees in some fashion that you could do something with it instead of just trying to do copy, paste, highlight. It was, not fun. Now what you can do though is you can actually get this information into your clipboard or export to a CSV file. So in this example that we have, I'm in the tracking pane for a particular meeting. I'm looking at search attendees, copy attendees, name, copy tracking information, or download as CSV. So my first option here is I went ahead and said copy all tracking information. And when I copied that into clipboard, or I'm sorry, Notepad, I see the name, attendance, the response, required, accepted, the whole bit. Pretty basic. If I do just copy attendee names, I get the same basic information, but I don't get any of the other pieces like required and accepted. All I'm going to get is their name. And if I do the downloads as CSV, this is what I end up seeing. It doesn't include the organizer. So you may still have to go through and add some additional information on your own to get that whole list, but it definitely beats having to try to highlight the list of names, paste it in Notepad, scroll, highlight the names again, scroll, stuff like that. So this makes it a little easier if you want to get some sort of a meeting attendee list that you can then use for some other purpose. Also, okay, and that was basically in the browser, probably also new Outlook or Windows. But if you're in Classic, you can do the same kind of thing. So if you go into the tracking tab in your meeting in the Classic Outlook client, you can do copy status to clipboard. What this one does, whoops, sorry about that. When you do that, it does copy the information to the clipboard. This is interesting, though, in the fact that it actually does give you the meeting organizer, which the other one did not. It seems a little bizarre to me, but if you need to get the organizer, you may want to go over to Teams Classic and pull it from there to get that information. But if that's not a big deal for you, you can do the browser-based version of it and get that. So. New skin tones and skin tone settings. This is one that seems to have come and gone and come back, and I'm not sure whether everybody has it now. But yeah, it was in targeted release, and then I think it didn't quite make it out as quickly as people were expecting. So when you have emojis that you're using in Teams, Up until now or recently, everything was yellow, which pretty much nobody is yellow if you're trying to get an emoji that looks like you. But what they've done is they've now given you the option under appearances and accessibility to pick a skin tone for your emojis. So you can still go with the yellow, and you can go with varying tones of skin up to something that is more black. And you can go through here. In this case, I picked medium. I can swear to you that I am really not that color. I'm probably more closer to, very light color here, if not pale white. But when you have that, what happens for any of the emojis that you're using, like hand gestures, any of the people emojis, if you see this little dot up in the corner, it's going to use your selected skin tone. So you see all the hands, it's using that darker brown skin tone that I selected. Same thing with faces, it's using that darker brown skin tone. So if you're in a situation where it's like, I want an emoji that looks like me, you can use the skin tone to possibly get there or get closer to being yellow because nobody is yellow like that. So you do have those options now. The other thing to keep in mind, and in this case, I selected one, there it is. But if you are just wanting to do a one-time change, if you do emojis, you see the emojis you're selecting from here. If you go to select an emoji that you haven't, preset your skin tones, and you see this little dot up in the upper right corner of the emojis, it means you can change the skin tone on that one. So all you would have to do is right click on the gray dot, and it's going to show you what those look like with the 6 different skin tones. And then you can select it from there. It's a one-time shot, doesn't change your settings, but you can do it for that one instance where you really want that to be displayed. So that's a lot of fun. Using the new editorial card on SharePoint pages, this was a new one that just came out very recently. And I remember when it first came out, I thought, what does this mean? The editorial card is a web part for a new feature designed to enhance content presentations on SharePoint pages and news. I'm like, this means nothing to me. What does it mean? Well, I tried it out and I'm kind of liking it now. So web part, go ahead and do a search on editorial, and it's going to call up the editorial web part there that you can select. Now, when you do that, it brings up this right here, this editorial card web part. Now, I'm doing this in a section that spans, one column. If I had done this in, say, a 2-column section, it would have only been as wide as the one column. So it's not going to stretch all the way across. It's going to take whatever the width of that section is. You have the option to either choose a color overlay, which is kind of what I'm doing here, or you can use a color block, or you can split. And I will show you here. You've also got the ability to do content alignment. You can pick your background. You can change the image. This was what it did by default, but I could click here, do change image, and go find something that looked closer to what I would want to portray. Now, if you scroll further on down in that right side configuration that had all those options, you also have the ability to do call to action, which means you can create a button, link it to something. You can even give it some accessibility text if you need to, or what you want the text to display in that particular card. So all these things put together look something like this. I went ahead and chose the call to action to be a button. I'm going to link it to Google. And I wanted to display text on that button to say, go find the news at Google. So this is how that ends up looking. Now, on this part up here, category news, extra, this is news about news. That is actually something that you get to click into the card and make the change right within the card itself. So it says category news. You could make that read whatever you wanted it to. Same with extras, same with news about news. Now, I told you that we had done image overlay on the first one. Here I changed a color block. So I still have the image in the background, but everything that I have here, it's not just overlaying the image, it's actually in a color block that's overlaying the image. And then the other one, which is a little different, is the split. And on the split, it's basically putting your image over on the left-hand side. You can still put your category, news, whatever you want it to be. But all the text stuff that you're dealing with, the call to actions, that's going to be over here on the right-hand side. So this is probably something that's going to look better if you're using the full page column rather than having like a 3 columns on the thing and everything's cramped in really tightly. But this is something that you could do a lot of this by kind of rolling your own with a text web part and possibly an image web part and trying to make it look good. This just kind of combines all that into a single web part, and you don't have to worry about trying to piece all the pieces together. So if you're wanting to do something on a page and make it look really nice and have one piece of information that basically wants to send somebody somewhere else or tell them about that, you might want to try the editorial web part. I was really surprised, but I really like it. Another thing that may surprise you is in the new Microsoft Modern Lists, there's another feature that you may not have noticed, but once you see it, you're like, oh, okay. So in this particular list, up here, over here on the right-hand side where the circle is, I'm going to see the fact that there are possibly one or more circles. And these are people who are working in the list at the same time you are. And if you hover over one of those circles, it's going to tell you, oh, this is the person, this is their name, that's their picture. Open the contact card if you want to know more about it. This may not mean anything to you. It may not be anything that you want to, spend any time dealing with. But if you're in a scenario where you're looking at a list, things look a little wonky, you're wondering who you might be able to ask or who might be out there at the same time who could be doing something, you're now going to be able to see who those people are in this bar here. So at this point, I know that there were 3 people in this view or in this list. I may want to go reach out to one of them. It's also a thing where if you're in a list and you're like, oh, okay, I'm the only one in this list. You see another name pop up in there. It's like, might want to check my permissions because somebody has access to this and I didn't think they did. So this is kind of cool for those of you who, like me, don't do design very well on your own. I need help coming up with something that looks nice on a page because I'm not wired that way. So what you can do now is if you're in a web part, you'll see this thing over here on the right-hand side. You've got an icon for design ideas. So if your page is in edit mode and you click on that, you're now going to get some cool suggestions on what you can do. So I was in the banner section when I clicked that. So over in design ideas, it basically took what I had in the banner and gave me some different ideas. This was the one I ended up selecting, but maybe it wanted to do this up at the top where I just had a color block in the middle. Again, things that I normally wouldn't think about, and I'm not really good about making decisions. It's helping me make some choices that are going to look far better than something I would have come up with. If you click into a text web part, it can also take whatever you had out there and give you some different stylistic options for your text. So maybe you want it blue with white text on it. Maybe you want it to have this kind of a thing, which is what I selected. So you've got this nice headline here and then the text underneath it. Maybe you want something a little bit more subtle and understated. This gives you some options to check from where you don't have to spend a lot of time going, does this look good? Does this look good? What about this? What about that? It gives you a heads up and a head start actually about what might or might not look good on your page. And then with an image web part, again, it does some really cool things here where it says, hey, you could put your stuff to the left with an image to the right. Hey, maybe it's cool to have a circle of your image there on the left with your text to the right. Or maybe you just want the big old block of image there with your text across the top. Again, this gives you some ideas about what might look cool. And that's really valuable if you're not the kind of person who can figure that out on your own, which I'm generally not. So keep in mind this only at this point in time works with banners, it works with text, and it works with image. I'm guessing over time, you'll start to see it. If you're in a place and you're wondering, oh, do I have the ability to use the designer image? If it's got a red dot next to that icon, yes, you can. So that can help you come up with some really cool things. Using the new author banner on SharePoint pages. So occasionally they slip in new banners, which are kind of cool. This is one which I think looks slick, and it has a really good use case for it. It's not something you use for everything that you have, but if you've got this use case, you might want to try it. So I've got the image and banner at the top. I want to edit this banner information, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit Properties. And now when I've got the different banners I can choose from, one of them is Author. And when I click on that, whoops. Oh, I did not pick up the last section. Okay. When you click on Author, we are missing a slide here. What it does is it actually puts the person's profile picture over on the right-hand side in the banner, and it's got their name over on the left-hand side. You're thinking, well, why would I want my picture on a banner? Well, imagine this is a page where the CEO of your company wants to share information, words from Bob. This type of a banner could be really cool for this page because when they go to this page, they're going to see Bob's picture, and it's going to reinforce the fact that this is information from your CEO. So that's something you might want to play with if you've got the right use case for it. Now going on to the next one that we have here, the carousel option in the SharePoint page hero web part. Now we've had the hero web part for a long time, and you could do your tiles and the basic things that you had, but now what they've done is they've added one additional option, which actually they now lead with for the default, and that is the carousel option. So if you put a hero web part on your page, instead of it giving you the big square block and then the 4 smaller blocks and you get to decide how many blocks you want to show, it actually defaults to carousel mode. And what carousel mode allows you to do is you get to pick an image or a link that you want to have show up as part of your carousel. So in this case, I just went out, grabbed an image from the common area, put this out here, and I've now got this as my first slide. It's an image overlay. I can then align this, and it enables me to put information such as, my topic, my header, and any of the description. So this becomes the same as one of the blocks I would have normally had before, only this time it's taking up the entire width of the hero web part. But you might be thinking, well, yeah, but I just don't want one. What you can do though is you can have up to 5 slides, which is really cool, because then what happens is once this actually starts, you go into the page once you've published it. If you have autoplay turned on, then what happens is it starts cycling through these every 3 to 4 seconds, which is kind of cool. And so you've got movement on the page, you've got things happening on the page. That can be very advantageous if you have like a company, say a company intranet homepage and you want to have like 5 stories just kind of scrolling through that they can get to. They can also scroll through on their own using this control down below, or they could actually stop it if they want to, just to stop on a particular one that they want. My only thing that I don't like about this one is that it takes up a whole lot of room height-wise. I would like this to be something that you could adjust so you didn't lose like your entire top part of your page to this. But again, it is a different option for being able to use that hero web part to display up to 5 pieces of information on your page that people might need to know. Another thing that I ran across, and this has probably been there forever, I just never noticed it, and that is in meeting reminders, you've always been able to say, hey, I want a reminder 5 minutes before, an hour before, whatever. I never noticed this one down below, which was edit email reminder. So I'm going to choose this edit email reminder. What that allows me to do is go in and say, hey, one day beforehand, or whatever the drop down is, there's like minutes, hours, whatever, send out an email that says, hey, just want to make sure you're coming to this meeting. Send it to all the attendees and click save. Now, one day before that meeting, this email is going to go out to everybody. And in this case, you can see you can have time of event to send the email, 5 minutes before, 1 week before, or something custom. So this is basically, instead of getting the little pop-up that says, hey, your meeting's starting in 5 minutes, you can actually send a formal email to people saying, hey, this meeting's going to be in an hour. This is what that email looks like to them, which is kind of cool. It feels very much like when you're doing town hall events or webinars where it sends you that reminder 1 hour beforehand. This is kind of giving you the same thing, but you can do it with just regular meetings. So you might want to play with this if you want to get people's attention to say, hey, you really need to show up for this meeting. Send them an email so they might know. And then last but not least, this is another one that we like to call this the snooping mode, or the stalker mode here. And you used to be able to do this really easy in the old teams. In the new teams, we kind of lost that ability because it was driven off of contacts, but contacts went away and the functionality did too. But what you can do is if you go into the chat area, if you've pinned the person to the chat, you can click the ellipsis and it says notify when available. So when they go from being offline to being available, you get that pop-up notification like you used to see in Teams Classic. Do I have that picture? Yeah. It doesn't do like, well, they go offline to online, or they go online to away, or they go this. This is basically like they were offline, they are now available. So you get that notification that pops up. If for some reason you're going, yeah, that was fine, but I don't want to keep track of them anymore, you can always go into that ellipsis again and turn off the notifications, and you no longer get those pop-ups anymore. So this is great if you're like waiting for somebody to show up because you've got a question you desperately need to ask them. You may want to do this on a temporary basis, or if you're a boss, you just want to know when your people get online. You can do that too. It's, like I say, a little stalkerish, but hey, so you do have that. And with that, yeah, and here we go. If you can't do it off the pinning, you can always go out to the team setting, notification activity, you'll see people, and you can manage the notifications from here too. So in this case, I clicked manage notifications and I had added Sandra here. So I will get those same kind of things without having to use the ellipsis to make the settings. So if you can't get to it that way, you can always get to it this way. And again, if you want to turn it off, you don't want to track them anymore, you can turn it off from here. And with that, that was the 20, folks. Got through with about 5 minutes to spare. Hopefully you were able to take one or two things away from that. Again, I don't expect every last one of them to have resonated with you, because that's not what this is about. But if you can walk away and there's 2 or 3 going, oh, that'll make my life so much easier, that's what we were shooting for here. And hopefully I was able to accomplish that.